But if I get knocked off, I will get back on.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, I've got a fabulous guest on my show today. He's been on before. He was on about 4 months ago, I think. His name is Daryl Denton. Daryl grew up in Tennessee. He was elected as the Alderman Commissioner and then full-time mayor of his own town. He is a Christian. We'll get back. Hello there.
Hello,
Can you
sir.
hear
Good to
me?
see you again. Thank you for having me on. I'm having a
Yeah,
little problem with
it's
my
nice to
reception
speak to
here.
you again, Daryl.
Well, thank you for having me again. I'm
Well,
glad to be able to
we'll see
help
how
out
it
any way I
goes on.
can. Yeah, I hope so. If I
Thank you.
lose you, I'll come back on, and I apologize to the audience for the inconvenience. But I'm out of town, and my Wi-Fi is not picking up quite correctly. So hopefully it'll go smoothly.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. How did it all start for you with the paranormal and Bigfoot?
Well, for me, it was, I really haven't had a tremendous amount of paranormal experiences. And some people say Bigfoot's paranormal, but, my first experience was in November of 1992 when I was deer hunting, about 28 feet up in a tree in my tree stand. And this creature walked out of a cane thicket to my left, and couldn't believe my eyes and what I'd seen. And pretty much leaped across a creek, a pretty good sized creek, and uh, went across onto a game trail and stopped and looked right up at me. I was kind of overlooking him. I was up high on about a 45-degree angle hill and up in a tree about 27, 28 feet roughly. I always knew the distance because my rope that I pulled my gun up with was 28 feet, and I would tie it to the top, and wherever it touched the ground is where I would try to be, which put me up about 28 feet up, which is a good view. But anyway, it walked out, looked at me, and showed me its teeth, growled at me, and went over and ripped a tree limb out to the left to my right facing it that I'd hung a drag rag on with deer scent on it the day before. And threw that on the ground and went back to the spot and just stared at me and looked at me. Never seen anything like that at that time. It was absolutely terrifying. I didn't know what to think. Um, then it let out I thought this thing was going to kill me. I truly did. I thought it was going to come back across the creek and pull me out of this tree. And I don't scare very easy. I've been around about everything in the woods, and takes a whole lot to scare me, but this thing was the meanest, ugliest thing I'd ever seen, and it wasn't happy. It was really mad at me for being there, and then it let out a. I was debating where to jump out of the top of the tree
Oh,
and,
God.
and run, or I had one bullet, and it was opening a black powder season. That particular day was the first day of the season. I went in the day before to set my tree stand up.
Right.
This is on my grandfather's farm. I'd never been quite deep in as I was this particular time. When I say deep in, that far back into his woods. There was a 45-minute to an hour walk. Um, and I had 150 caliber bullet, and I just didn't think that that was going to kill this creature. And I didn't really want to shoot it, but I was afraid it was going to come and get me. So fortunately, after it stared at me for a bit, and I was trying to catch my breath to figure out what to do, it let out a scream, kind of a yell, cross between a guttural yell and scream at the same time that echoed all down this hollow. And it was loud. And it looked at me and it turned and it walked away. And I watched it stop one time and look back at me in the tree. And I watched it walk off into the hardwoods until it disappeared. And I immediately just, instead of taking 15 minutes or so to come down to that tree stand, it was a climbing type tree stand. It takes a good amount of time to come down with those things sometimes because you've got the seat and the climber and you have to just move a little bit at a time. I just jumped out of the top of the tree with my gun, and this hillside was real steep, like probably 45-degree angle, and I hit the leaves and slid all the way down the hillside into the creek on those leaves with my gun above my head. And the creek was probably a couple feet deep, and I just jumped up out of the creek and ran up the bank and took off running as fast as I could, looking back the whole time to get away from this creature or if it was coming back. And after I crossed that first hill and was going up the second hill, which was, there were 3 hills I had to cross to get back to a barbed wire fence that my grandfather's pasture was in. Before I got to his house, I had to cross that pasture, which was about 200 yards wide, and go through a gate and then go into his house. But I just ran as hard as I could, and after I crossed that first hill and started up about halfway up the second hill, I was kept looking back, thinking this creature may be coming after me, and there it stood on top of the hill. It was watching me run, and I'm thinking, well, after I didn't know, it just kicked in more adrenaline at that time. I didn't want this thing to catch me, so pretty much just kept running, and it kept looking back, and it wasn't after me. It may not have been the same one. It may have been one that looked like that one, but it was definitely watching me run. And I'd hunted those woods all my life. I'd never seen anything like that in those woods. Of course, I'd never been that far back in there either. But that was close to my grandfather's old home place, old log home he lived in that had fallen in at that time. But it was terrifying experience. And when I finally did get back to my grandfather's house, I, of course, was looking back the whole time. I went in and just ran and sat down and into his sitting area, and he was sitting in an old rocker to the left of me, and I was sitting down in the corner behind this big pot-belly stove that had wood in it. This was, of course, fall, November. It's cool in Tennessee in that time of year, and he always had a fire going. And
yeah,
I was so out of breath, I couldn't get my breath, and my grandfather he always called me boy. He never called me by my name, and we were super close, very, very close. He was 92 years old at that time, but in
good going.
unbelievable health. I mean, he still was milking the cows and working the farm and plowing and had a garden and raising tobacco. And I mean, he was a really tough, fit guy, and I spent most of my summers with him. And he said, "Boy, what's wrong with you?" And couldn't get my breath. I was just completely out of breath. I was sitting over in the corner behind that stove, and I was trying to talk, but I was just so far out of breath. And I would get up and go look out the window there in the living area and look out the back door in the kitchen where I came through into the house, and didn't see this creature. Finally got my breath, and my grandfather said, "Boy, what's wrong with you? It looked like you've seen a ghost." And I said, "No, I seen a monster." And he said, "A monster? What do you mean a monster?" And I said, "Well, I've never seen anything like that. It was definitely some type of monster." And what it looked like, and I described it to him, and he hesitated. And this is somebody I was very close to that shared a lot of what I call secrets with me,
Yeah,
as I was very close to my grandfather. And He said, "No, boy, what you seen was a woodburger." I said, "A woodburger? What is a woodburger?" He goes, "Oh, they've been around these parts all my life. The old folks, which he called his parents and aunts and uncles, they were very aware of them, and they'd seen them." And he went into a few stories about it. He goes, "But they're not a monster." He said, "You was probably in its territory and scared it and didn't like you there." And I said, "Well, it definitely didn't like me there." And I said, "Why have you not ever told me about these things?" And he went into the fact, well, if I'd have told you, you wouldn't have hunted and you wouldn't have camped and you wouldn't have spent the night in the barn and all the things you did growing up here. And they don't bother you. They're just very territorial. He said, "I've seen 4 in my lifetime, and I've heard a lot more. But I'll be working in the field, and I'll look up, and one's just standing by the fence watching me work." And kind of hard to believe that my grandfather had never told me about these things, but I understood the reasoning. But he said in the wintertime they get kind of hungry when food is short, and they'll come to the hen house, which he had a big old chicken house
Yeah.
out to the left of his back porch, and they'll take 3 or 4 chickens and they'll leave a little pile of sticks and rocks like they're paying for them. And he said, "They've been around here all my life, and they're not going to bother you. They're just very territorial." So that was pretty much what got me into it. I was just doing my regular deer hunt that I had up there every year with 3 of my buddies who were there. We'd pull my camper up there and park it next to my grandfather's barn, and we had it all set up and had all of our ATV or 4-wheelers with us, and we spent a whole week up there every year deer hunting. And we had stands all over. We had probably a 10-mile area that we could hunt in. Not all of it was my grandfather's property, but it was his adjoining neighbors who didn't mind us hunting. And we had stands everywhere. But I'd never been back that far. Normally I'd walk 15 or 20 minutes into the woods and climbed up into one of the stands we built, or I'd carry my climbing stand or something. But this was a good 2-3 miles back from where I'd hunted before. It was a good walk. It was 45 minutes to an hour to get there. And in the dark, not knowing the area. Yes, sir.
Daryl, looking back at the creature, how big do you think it was then?
Well, there's the day before I seen the creature, I went into that area to put my stand around a tree, where I could climb it in the morning. I wanted to be ready when I went in, just get up and take my stand and going up it instead of having to look for a tree, because you need a tree with good bark on it for a climbing stand. And when I went across the creek and looked for signs of deer, there was lots of signs because there was a real heavy acorn harvest that year. A lot of acorns, and deer love acorns. And across that creek, there was a game trail right on top of it where this creature jumped onto and walked down, and lots of deer tracks. And the limb I hung the drag rag on, which is a little elastic thing with a cloth about, a foot by a foot that's attached, that you put on your boot and you walk into the woods, and it covers up. You put some scent on it called doe and estrus scent, and it kind of keeps the human smell off of your tracks and kind of draws in sometimes the male deer, the buck. And I'd hung that on the tree limb across from the creek where I could see it. And when that's up, so and my guess is, it was, if I raised I'm 6'5", and if I raise my arm all the way up as far as I can, it's a little over 8 foot, about 8 foot 1 inch at that time. And that tree limb was about 8 foot 1 inch because I had to jump up to get it, and when I let it go, it was really close to as far as I could reach. So the creature its head was about even with that branch before it pulled it off the tree. It was right at the 8 foot mark, maybe an inch more or an inch less, and it was good size. I mean, I'm guessing 600 to 800 pounds. Um, I weighed 280, and it was well twice or more of me because it had real wide shoulders, real bulky. Like you hear a lot about bodybuilders, it was a lot wider than a human, but at the shoulder and the chest area. Now, its legs below the knees weren't real big, they were thin, but it was solid black. It was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. One side of its mouth was kind of out of contortion. It was kind of twisted like the right side of its face, and it would be
Yeah.
the right side of its mouth was kind of. I went at that time in '92. There were no groups, no podcasts, no radio shows.
That's right.
There was nobody to talk to about this kind of stuff back then. And, the only alternative I had to try to figure out what this thing was, my granddad had called it a woodburger. And I went to 2 or 3 libraries at that time after this happened when I got back home. A week or so later, it stayed on my mind continuously. I had nightmares for 7 months probably. I didn't sleep.
Oh, God.
It pretty much, changed my life completely. Um, and then you couldn't tell anybody. But I mentioned it to my friends and they started laughing. I said, Big D, we've never seen anything like that. Everybody calls me Big D. My friends always have. And we never seen anything like that up here. They just laughed. You must have been drinking the night before. I said, no, I didn't have anything to drink, but I'm telling you, I didn't say anything else about it. Just let it go. But
I know it's very difficult in them days.
it was very difficult. I went to the library, like I was saying, to try to find pictures of these things because I don't know that I ever thought I didn't believe in Bigfoot. I really never thought much about it. If there was a Bigfoot, they didn't live in my area. They lived out in Oregon or Washington or British Columbia or somewhere like that. I never thought they lived in Tennessee. But, this thing was, after I got to looking at the library, I remember going to several libraries. I did find a book and it had the top 10 types of Bigfoot. I don't remember the name of the book, but it had a picture of 10 different types in this book. And the second one was called the Woodburger. And it looked just like what I'd seen, except the eyes in the picture that was there, the actual picture that was drawn were red, and the eyes I seen were just black. They weren't red. But the rest of it looked just like what I'd seen. It even had the mouth that was kind of twisted a little bit, and I've seen quite a few forest people, which are similar to Bigfoot but are different in a lot of ways. And I've seen other Bigfoot or Sasquatch since then, but I've never seen another one like the one I seen on my first encounter of the woodbug. I've never seen another one like that, and I hope I never do. But but that one was definitely life changing, and it was something that
I
took
bet it
me.
was as well.
Yeah, took me a long time to get over it. It really did. And I don't think I would have ever gotten over it if I
I
hadn't.
bet it did. We've got a question.
Sure.
Probably. I've got a question from Rebecca. Hi, Daryl. Have you experienced the smell people, what they talk about?
I have
I don't
never.
know what the smell people are.
Yeah, I do. I'm aware of. Well, some people call them the little people, the small people. Yeah, I have never seen a small person. No, I haven't. I have friends who have seen them, but I personally have never seen one of them. No. I have seen what I believe to be evidence of that they live in the woods in some of the areas I've been in, but I've never personally seen one of those. No. Now, my close friend Barton Nunley, that he's one of my research partners. He actually found a tiny arrow in the woods. I mean, like tiny, and it was etched out just like a regular arrow you would find from the Native Americans. And It
Right.
had the it was a complete arrow. It had the actual arrow part of it along with the arrowhead attached to it with the feather. So I don't know how something very intelligent and small had to make that.
I think I think Rebecca's just written in chat room again. She said the stench. She means the stench people. Stench. Stench.
Well, I've been around a lot of Bigfoot since that time, and like I said, the forest people that look very similar but they're different.
Oh
Um,
yeah, tell us a little bit about the forest people.
well, and a lot of those, people ask me all the time, did it smell? I've been around a lot of them, and they don't all smell. Now, I have smelt some before, but not as often as not smelling. I kind of believe in my research team that I go into regularly now. We usually research from October to the around the 1st of May, and then we don't research much in the summer because of all the elements of the thick undergrowth and brush, and you have to deal with the bugs and the ticks and everything else. But our season starts up in a week or so, and we'll be pretty busy doing a lot of research in the main area that we go into. And I don't think that all of them smell. I think it's possibly even some type of gland they have. If something
Yeah,
scares them or make them nervous, they may use it like maybe like a skunk or something does. I mean, I don't know that. That's just something that we've discussed. But I've been around some that didn't smell at all. So I really don't know how that works. It's just an educated guess when I say that there may be some type of gland. I don't know that to be true.
yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I'm no expert at anything. I can only tell you what I've experienced and what I've encountered. And I don't know if it's a
There's a
blessing or very fortunate or what, but I've been around a lot of creatures, and they seem
yeah.
to find me.
Do you think? I know there's another question from Steph this time. Question for Daryl: do Bigfoot follow yearly migration patterns?
Well, I've been, the family I had on the river that I was with almost 4 years, and they were actually what I consider my friends. They didn't migrate at all. They stayed there all year round. Now they do go off. I don't know the distance, but they do hunt, way away and come back and bring food if there's no food there. But I do think some of them migrate, probably follow the game. The game being the deer, which is their number one food. Uh, um, and I probably would think, that would have a lot to do with the weather and the terrain on where they lived at, also.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I know you do a lot of research with Rob Morehouse, and
Ron Moorhead,
yeah, Morehead.
my research team is Ron Moorhead, one of my best friends. Martin Groves, been my best friend 43 years. And then Barton Nunley, who is my other research. That's our team, those four guys.
Tell us, tell us about the land between the lakes. Why is it so special? That place.
The LBL is what it's called, Land Between the Lakes. People refer it to as the LBL. It's about 170,000 acres of just pure, unnatural, rural wilderness, basically. And it's people think it's some type of national park, but it's not. It's run by the U.S. Forestry Service. At one time, it was run by the Park Service, but the Forestry Service has had it for quite a number of years now. Um, it's probably I've been in some strange areas. There's some strange areas of Georgia I've been into. Some of the east and west, some of the western mountains of Georgia. Some strange stuff there. Researching the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia and North Carolina. I've been in that area quite a few times. It's pretty strange in some of those areas. There's quite a few strange areas in Kentucky and Tennessee, but and even in Oklahoma. I was in some areas in Oklahoma and West Texas and East Texas, Western Eastern Texas, Arkansas that has strange areas too. There's when I say strange, there's just something about those areas that seems to have more creatures living in them than other areas, and they're not all friendly. All these they're like people. These creatures are people in my belief, and an ancient people, and they're not all friendly. They're like us. You know, you've got good and bad and everything, and you don't always run into the friendly one. It may be one that's aggressive and doesn't want you in its area, and will do everything it can to make you leave, including possibly harming you. But the LBL is probably the strangest place I've ever been. And I've been to quite a few areas that have some strangeness. But, we do basically most of our research in the LBL. We do go outside the LBL in certain areas. But the LBL has a lot of very strange things there. It's goes back to the late 1700s when the settlers moved in there, and the American Indian Native people lived there. They talked about the dog creature, which the American Indian, which I have Indian in my blood too, American Native. My grandmother was, but they talk about them as an evil being. But there are dog men there. I've been very fortunate. I get to go out there and see them every now and then. But too complete and seen numerous Bigfoot there. So, it's an area of strangeness that goes way, way, way back. And Martin Groves does so much, he spends so much time in there researching.
Yeah.
Did I
You
lose
know,
you?
do you think we are chosen to see Bigfoot? Some people never see anything, and other people seem to be able to see them. I'm sure he'll be back in a minute. I know it's absolutely hammering it down outside my window now. I'll get him back on again.
Time there. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that, folks.
It's okay, no problem. Yeah, what we're saying is,
No,
do you think we are chosen to see Bigfoot?
I think some people are 100% believe that, and the reason why I do believe that because I think I'm one of those people. I can go in the woods, and if I'm in an area, these creatures don't live in all the woods. They live in certain areas of the woods, and there are a tremendous lot more amount of these creatures than there was when I first had my first experience, in my belief. But I can go in the woods in certain areas where they're at, and if I just sit down, they'll find me. And I don't really think that you ever go out and find Bigfoot anyway. I think they allow you to see them, and again, they find you. But they're very intelligent. They do somehow, some way, have the ability to read your intentions. They know why you're there, whether you're there to harm them or just there to be in the woods. You're in their home. That belongs to them. And they take it very personal. That's their home, and if they don't want you there, they're going to get you out of there. If you go in there with a
I
gun
probably
or a
will do.
camera,
What do you think Bigfoot may? Yeah.
I'm, I'm
What do
sorry
you
I missed the
think
last.
Bigfoot mainly is then? What do you think Bigfoot basically is then? What kind of creature is it, Bigfoot?
Well, this is my personal opinion from my experience. Took me a lot of time to gain trust in the forest people that I met on the river. in 1999, and I was with them almost 4 years before they disappeared. But took a lot of time and effort, and I was with those creatures every day or every other day until the last time I was there, which I missed a couple of weeks before I lost contact with them. But I became very trustworthy to those creatures, to three of them anyway, and they trusted me, and we had kind of a bond of understanding each other, and it took a lot of time and effort to try to gain the trust and learn from them. But they have their own language. They do understand our language. They do understand Native American language, and they relate to your actions and the reason you're there is a very cautious way they react to people or humans. But I think they're an ancient people. I don't think they're an ape by any means. I don't think they're any type of ape, or I think they're an ancient type people. Um, I asked questions many times for them, and they didn't answer me, but they did shake their head or nod or give me a sign when I would ask certain questions. And it took a long time to even get that out of them. But gaining the trust was the first thing. But the two that I was closest to on the river, and there was a pretty good sized family of them on the river. But there was three that frequented me often and kind of trusted me. And one of them was a female that was about 6 foot tall when I first started seeing her. She was probably about 5 foot tall. And there was a male about the same size as her. These were both, they weren't juvenile, but they were in between juvenile and adults, probably an adolescent. But and then the other one was about 7 foot tall, and he was the one who watched over them. And I asked them many times, "Where are you from? Would you please tell me where you're from?" I asked them what their name was. I told them my name over and over and over, and hoping to get a response from them. And I asked them, "How did they get here? Where do they come from?" I pointed up. I said, "Are you from another galaxy?" And all three of them shook their head yes. So unless they were lying to me for some reason, which I don't believe they were, apparently they're from another galaxy. So
interdimensional.
they didn't know Jesus Christ. When you mention the name, that it gets their attention real well. Um, you know, I learned a lot from those creatures.
I bet you did. A lot of people think they may have paranormal powers. Daryl, a lot of people think they've got paranormal powers.
We lost you again.
Paranormal powers.
I lost you on part of that. Could you say that again, please?
Yeah, I can do. A lot of people think they've got paranormal powers.
Well, they definitely have special powers. I don't know if you call them paranormal or not. One of my best friends, Ron Moorhead, if you read his book, The Quantum, which is probably one of the most powerful books I've ever read, and I've read it 3 times, and from it because it has kind of energy. When you get in Einstein, he thought everything was energy. So their frequency is a lot higher than yours. They can use their energy differently. They can special powers. They can. My radios have been drained. My lamps have been drained. My flashlights, my watch has even stopped at 12:48 on one occasion. So I don't know how they do that, but
yeah, exactly. I think we lost him again. I know I can hear the rain against the windows. So we've got a bad storm coming. I'll get him back on again. Hello. He's back
Okay,
again.
let's try one more time. I want to apologize to your audience and you too. I don't know if it's my service or yours. I believe it's mine, but I apologize for all that.
That's fine.
You were talking about special powers, and yes, I
Yeah.
do believe they have special powers. 100%. I know they have special powers. Now, I
Right.
haven't,
Yeah.
it's talking about Ron Moorhead's book, The Quantum, he believes that they cloak and they go into what I call interdimensional, and I think they do too. Have I personally seen one do that? No, I have not, but I do believe it. Um, did see one go behind a tree and never came back out, and I don't know where else it could have went because there's nowhere for it to go. Special powers, I've been in the field several times with one of my old research partners for quite a few years, Billy Howell, down in Cheatham County, Tennessee, and we've lost the power in our lamps, our flashlights. My watch even stopped at 12:48 one night, and our vehicles, the alarms went off on them when these creatures were around. So yes, they do have some type of special power or some type of way that apparently drain the energy.
Why do you think that the government agencies have publicly come out and said this species doesn't exist?
Oh, that's pretty simple in my opinion. There's two reasons for that. The number one reason is your scientific people, which you know, I won't use anybody's name, but I have one person in mind. They don't want to prove the existence of Bigfoot because there's nowhere for it to fit in the scientific evolution wheel. There is nowhere for it to fit. Um, they don't want to. They want to make everybody believe it's an ape, and it's not an ape. I've been around many of them, and none of them are apes. If they're an ape, they sure are different than any ape that I've ever heard of or seen. They pretty much they're more intelligent than a lot of people. They know what you're thinking before you think it for some reason. They have a very special ability of intelligence that picks up on your intentions. If you have a bad intention, very rarely will you ever see one of these creatures. Um, they do know, I believe, they don't like certain colors. They don't like red or orange. I always try to wear the same type of clothing when I was around the Bigfoot family. That I would actually
Yeah.
change into the same clothes when I went in there because I think they kind of relate to you as by what you're wearing. And they know your voice and they know it. I used to come in 200 yards out and I'd say, "Hey, how are you today?" I'd start talking to them before I got there. They knew I was coming. They would get excited and I could hear them. But the government, second of all, the scientific community doesn't want to prove that they want everybody to believe everybody they're apes because, if I personally believe it's that with scientific community. A lot of other people feel the same way I do about that. The second reason is I'm talking about in the United States alone. The national park industry is a 2.8 billion. That's with a B dollar industry for people coming in and camping and park tourists and people
Exactly.
hiking in the mountains and people camping mom and pop and the grandkids camping out in the tent or bringing their camper along. And if you tell everybody that there's Bigfoot out in the woods and some other creatures that I know exist in the woods, for example, like Dogman, it's not going to be very good for your profit base because a lot of people are not going in there. They'd be frightened and feared to go in there. And I personally think it would put a big dent in the economy for the national government, for our government here in the United States and the national parks. So That's my two reasons why I believe that they'll never be told that they exist. And the government knows. They know they exist.
Hey,
There's
I
no
know
doubt
they do,
about that.
Daryl, because I think in some states you're not allowed to shoot a Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah, I think it's the state of Washington and the state of Oregon. It's against the law to shoot one. But they don't. But they say they don't exist. But you can't shoot one. There's a place called Pikes Peak, and that I camped out for 10 days at in Colorado, not far from Colorado Springs. That has a lot of Bigfoot sightings in that area, and it has signs up to be careful and cautious of the Bigfoot.
But
And
they don't exist.
correct. It's a national park area, United States National Park area, and they've got signs up: "Be aware of the Bigfoot." And I don't remember exactly what the sign said, but there was several things on there about Bigfoot in the area. But yeah, they definitely know they exist, and there's a lot more people in the woods than there once was too. And then you've got a lot of industry and homes encroaching on the Bigfoot's forest, an area that it's always lived in. And they're building new homes and things in areas that were rural for a long time. And with the growth that the United States, and I'm sure that Europe is seeing too. And
Hmm,
I think that's another reason you're seeing more of the creatures or hearing more sightings, because they're encroaching in their area. On top of that, plus more people are out in the woods looking for them.
exactly. When you talk about Bigfoot, how far back do the stories of Bigfoot go?
My Native American people, from what I understood now from my grandmother, who's been gone for quite a while, but her mother, her mother's grandparents knew about them. They called them the Chayutanka, and that means large elder of the forest, Chayutanka. And I'm talking about probably as far back as the 1700s. Um, I think they've been here a long time. A lot of people, I have people that send me messages all the time. Are they the Nephilim? No, I do not think Bigfoot is the Nephilim. Um, it's just personal opinion. Like I said, I don't claim to know everything. It's just my belief. I don't think they are. I do, like I said before, I do think some of them will harm you. I don't think all of them are friendly.
Yeah,
So
I agree. With all the sightings and witnesses coming forward, why do you think we still don't have a clear and cut evidence of existence of this creature?
well, I think there's been some great evidence myself, and I hear that a lot from a lot of people.
Exactly.
I mean, you've got the Patterson Gimlin film, which was actually the first one that got everybody's attention. And a lot of people claimed it to be a hoax and not true. And Roger Patterson had somebody in a costume. And,
Yeah.
after I've seen the breakdown of that thing, especially with the great M.K. Davis here in the United States, him and Thinker Thunker alone just spent tons of hours of time on that, trying to prove it to be unreal. And they couldn't, because of the muscle mass in the legs, the shoulders, the chest, the breast on the creature moving the way they did. There was nothing known at that time to be liable for any type of costume in 1967 when that thing was filmed. And then you've got, I don't know if you know the great Paul Freeman or not. He was famous here in America, but he had a fantastic film of a Bigfoot walking through the forest that he had tracked himself. And there's one called the 4th of July Bigfoot that shows a Bigfoot and a baby, an infant, going in between some large rocks. There's a skunk ape of Mississippi, the hunter that filmed what we didn't know what it was. He was bow hunting in a swamp, and he had a creature in front of him breaking bark off a tree, trying to feed on something down in the tree. I mean, there's numerous actual footage of these creatures that people have taken themselves or just regular normal people that weren't looking for a Bigfoot. They were just enjoying a day at the national park and run into one of them. So, I think there's quite a bit of good evidence out there that they exist. But, I think people, when you see the Patterson Gimlin film, everybody wants that kind of footage. Now, that's one in a million. You're not going to get a forest person,
No.
Sasquatch, Bigfoot just walking out in the middle of nowhere where you can just take a legitimate shot of it like that.
I'm going to say, because it doesn't always happen like that. If you see something, you're more enthralled looking at it without getting a camera out of your pocket. And by the time you've got it out, it's gone.
True. Yeah, very true. And, I know for a fact the ones that was on the river, and don't ask me how they do this because I don't know what to tell you. So I don't have an answer for it. But I had in 1999. It was probably more like 2000 or early 2001 when I had the little disposable cameras that were out back then, and I didn't even
Yeah.
have a cell phone until probably 98 or 99, and it was one of those huge. I took the little disposable cameras that took like 32 exposures, I believe. It might have been 36. I had two of them. I had one Kodak and I had one that was a Japanese brand. I don't recall the name of it. It was a green and white box. And after you used those up, you just took them to the photo shop and they would develop the footage for you. I'm not talking about two complete 32 or 36 exposures off of both of those that the forest people that I had friended on the river, and every one of them came out solid black. There was nothing on them. And I'm talking about I was within 25 feet of the creatures, and
Oh,
how they
God.
didn't take, I don't know, but that's the truth. They not one of those pictures took, and I don't know how that happened. I went back to the place that made it, and I said, "Did y'all mess up my pictures?" And they said, "No, we didn't do anything. Just put anything on them." So after the second row I'd taken, and the same thing happened to it, I started thinking, I don't know that you can take a picture of these creatures. So maybe they have some type of ability not to allow you to take pictures, or if they want to or don't want to. I don't really have an answer. I wish I did, but I have got some pictures since then. I actually got a picture from one of those creatures back in the day, finally, but it wasn't from a camera. It was from a 9mm uh, old type camera,
Oh,
like
camcorder.
Patterson, right? Like Patterson and Gimlin took.
Right.
Similar to what they had. I think they actually had a 12mm, but similar to that. But I've got a few pictures I've had over the years, and I used to post them, and people would steal them, so I don't post them like I once did in my group. But
Best way. Keep them. Well, why do you think people think UFOs and Bigfoot are connected?
what do they think? What now? I'm sorry to understand the question.
Why do you think UFOs and Bigfoot are connected?
Well, the ones on the river, like I told you, when I asked them, where are you from? Are you from the heavens? Are you from another galaxy? Were you born here? And when I said the galaxy, they let me know they were from what I believed was maybe another planet or another somewhere else in our solar system, and came here from there. And I have heard lots of stories about people seeing Bigfoot right after they spotted a UFO. So I have a friend that was abducted by a UFO several times, and she swears up and down there was a Bigfoot on the UFO, and I do believe her.
I just want to ask
That
you
was
about the ball of light. I think it was 2020 at a farm. What you saw.
2020. I think you're probably referring to the Bigfoot family that Billy Howell and Derry Yarbrough and I had in Cheatham County, Tennessee, that a friend of ours, David, had called us down there because he had some kind of creatures. He wasn't aware they were Bigfoot at that time around his house scaring his girlfriends because he drove a tractor trailer rig from Nashville to New York and he was gone 5 days. That trip took him 5 days and he was gone and his girlfriend and the dogs, he had 2 dogs, they stayed in the house while he was gone. And she was being frightened by something coming down to her house and it was scaring her to death. There was a couple of them looking through the window when she was there alone at late at night and frightened her, and it was taking vegetables and fruits and vegetables off the deck behind their house also. And we went down there, and that was in 2018 when we first started going down there. And we spent a lot of time down there, and there was quite a few Bigfoots that lived there. I don't know how many, but there was quite a few in the family. We seen the female and the juvenile several times. I had the juvenile walk right up to the truck and look in the window at me when I was pulling in. But like the top 3 or 4.
Back on again, I think. You'll be back on in a minute, Daryl.
Am I back? Am I back on?
Yeah, we're back on
All right, I
again.
apologize again. But 2020, earlier that year, that was the same area of Cheatham County, Tennessee, that we researched with a family of Bigfoot down there. It was probably sometime around May of 2020. We had this. It looked like what I would only call a light bulb. It was about the size of a light bulb, and I could see it coming approximately 100 yards up in the woods. We were sitting in a flat area where we gifted the Bigfoot their food, and my partner Billy was to the left of me, and I was probably 50 feet from him to the right behind a big tree, sitting there waiting for him to come in. And we seen this, it looked like a light bulb coming across the ground from a long way off. It was just coming right toward us. It looked identical like a
It's gone again, but we're not far off end of the show. But wait to see if he gets back on again. I know he's got a bad connection where he is, but we've done well. I'll get him back on again.
You know, all I can tell you is if I come back on again, I'll assure you I'll try to be in a better spot where this doesn't happen. But anyway, if you can hear me, that light bulb came all the way to me about 2 foot from my right leg, and I even pulled out my 45 pistol. I didn't know what this thing was. It was coming right to me, and when I pulled out my pistol, Billy was to the left of me, my research partner in that area. He hit a real bright lamp that he had that lit up the whole woods. And when he did hit the lamp, this thing turned into a opossum. And it looked at me, it hissed at me, opened its mouth, and turned into an opossum, and walked back to the same direction it had come from. About 2 hours, well, not 2 hours, probably about 20 or 30 minutes later, we had two huge, bright orange, pink, red orbs size of beach balls in the same area that creature had walked back to. And we watched them hover about a foot off the ground. And we watched them and watched them, and as they went down the side of the hill. And that was the night we got zapped pretty hard. And I got sick. He got sick, and we had a lot of stuff happen. That was the night my watch stopped at 12:48.
Oh God, yeah.
A week later, we were back down there. A Saturday night, a week from that night, we were back down there, and it was raining, and we were in a ground blind, like a plastic-like tent, round tent that Billy used to deer hunt out of to keep the rain from getting on us, and it had windows in it, and we had all these orbs flying around us, these white orbs. There were 7 of them. They were about the size of softballs. And we couldn't figure out why they were flying around us, but they were flying really fast. The tree limbs and were trying to circle us around the black area. And this went on for quite a while. And we decided to leave. And, I didn't go back down there for a while. I wanted to take a break because it was the last 2 times we weren't seeing Bigfoot. We were seeing orbs and all type of lights, and had a lot of weird things going on. I guess that's what you're referring to. Can you hear me?
Outside my window. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
I'm getting part of it, and like I said again, I apologize for the inconvenience, but I don't really know what's going on here. This doesn't happen very often. But I'm out of town and don't know if the Wi-Fi is real good here or not. Apparently.
I'll just ask you one more question before we go. What's the difference between forest people and Bigfoot?
Well, I think there's a big difference. I truly believe the forest people are the real Bigfoot. They don't look anything like the first one I seen. They look more like the Patterson Gimlin type, which I call the 3, or by the book picture is all I'm going by, type 3 or type 4 looking one. They're very friendly. They're very intelligent. They're not aggressive. They're just different than the other ones. The ones I had in Cheatham County, the ones I had on my first experience, none of those were friendly. They were more aggressive. They just tolerated us being there and really didn't like us being there. The forest people were truly like friends to me. We did a lot of things together. I bought them whistles, and they would whistle when I came in. When I'd leave, they would say bye, bye. They had heard me say it. They mocked me saying bye. We had a really good relationship. I've never had a relationship with another family of Bigfoot like that, and don't think I probably ever will. But if I did, I would be very interested in getting back into that circumstance. But I haven't found another family like those, and
Do you still go back then, Daryl? Do you still go back to see them?
Oh, I'd be going back to seeing them regularly if they were still there. But I went down there every day or every other day for almost 4 years. Never let 2 days go by before I would take them food. I would take and sit with them for an hour or two and try to talk or communicate with them. They made me gifts. They were just very close to me, and as I was saying earlier, there was only one time that I was working very hard and I couldn't get off, and for about a 2-week time there, first time ever I hadn't went down there every day or every other day. I couldn't get down there. I was just too busy working, and I didn't get down there for about 2 weeks. Might have been a little longer than that, but I was real worried that I would. I was real worried about it because they had never known me not to be down there on a regular basis, every day or every other day. And when I went down there, I parked behind the old plant that was there, and I took that long, roughly 200-yard walk through the woods on the game trail. And when I got to the spot where they were at, as I started getting there, the whole area had been leveled with backhoe and bush hog,
Oh,
and
God.
they had leveled the whole area. The kudzu that these creatures had lived in, there was a huge patch of real thick vines that went all down the side of this riverbank for quite a ways. It was real thick. It was hard to get through. That's where they lived back in that. It was all gone. They had took bulldozers and backhoes and leveled all of it off. It was all piled in a big pile, and there was small trenches and stakes up like they were about to build something. They had little stakes with pink ribbons tied to them, and they were all around it like they were going to build some type of building or something there.
Yeah.
And I went in yelling for them, and even walked back in there 2 or 3 miles, and went back numerous times, probably 9 or 10 times, and even went to the other side of the river trying to find them, and I never seen them again.
Oh.
So, and people ask me what I think happened to them. What I think happened to them, because I did find shell casings on the ground, quite a few shell casings from a rifle and a shotgun. I truly think that the government, I'm not sure who owned that property, but there was an old water filtration sewer plant there, they was apparently adding on to it or building something like it or whatever they were doing. I think they come in and probably seen those creatures, the people that came in to level it off or clear it out, and probably called either the local authorities or the game and fish, and I think they probably come in there and shot them.
Oh.
I don't know that, but that's what I think probably happened to them. But I went back in there for miles back behind where it was at, and it was very rural back there. Went way back down this
I bet
river.
I bet you felt bad then, didn't you? Not going in earlier.
Oh, it's always bothered me. It still does. But I think if they were here, they would have found me by now. But I don't know that they were killed, but I think they probably were. With all those shell casings I found from rifle and shotgun, it was a large number of shell casings. So somebody went back there and fired guns, and I don't know what other reason they'd be firing them unless they were trying to scare them off.
Mm.
But I believe if they scared them off, they would still be in the area.
You would have thought.
I think they would have answered me because they were very aware of my voice and they knew me. And they were my friend. I considered them a friend, and they considered me a friend.
Oh, I bet they did as well. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I know you're on holiday.
Hey, it's no problem. I'm glad to be here any time with you, and I'm honored to be here. And thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show.
I would like to apologize to everybody for getting knocked off so many times. I'm sorry about that. It wasn't intentional. And if you would follow my group, Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures. If you're not a member, I appreciate you joining. We don't allow any criticism in our group, and we only let them open-minded people in. So as long as you're nice and considerate to everybody, we'd love to have you as a member. And I'm in the process of writing my first book. My best friend Martin Grove's new book will be out in a few weeks, and Ron Moorhead has a new book out that is absolutely excellent, great read.
Brilliant.
And my buddy Barton Nunley has numerous books that are great reads. But we'll all be back in the wilderness again, and looking forward to getting out there and finding some new information to share with everybody.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you to everybody in the chat room. It's always nice for people and questions. I love it when people ask questions. for my guest. It's extra then. You enjoy your few days away from home.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Thanks for everybody for watching.
Thank you. And enjoy your afternoon there.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
My guest on Friday is Brad Olson. Brad is an author of 9 books, including 2 esoteric series, Modern Esoteric Future. He's award-winning author. He'll be a great guest on the show on Friday. That's the Friday the 27th at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific, and 7 o'clock in the UK. This Friday, Brad Olson is a great guest. He's been on. Well, I was just looking. It was 4 years ago since last on the show. So I'm sure he'll have lots more different stories to tell us. Thank you again. Good night and God bless. Bye for now.